Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle-earth here with a deep dive video on Strider. He's being very utilized in the early starts of this game. So I want to go through who he struggles against, who he plays well with, and how I see him fitting into the future of this game. So stay tuned. All that's coming up in just 1 second. So I wanted to start a series doing deep dives on each commander. Maybe we'll pair them up at different times, but for now we're just starting out doing one at a time. Strider is super utilized in the early game for a lot of reasons we'll discuss. So I want to go through and explain why that's happening, who he plays well with, and really just if it's someone you should invest in based on who you have on your roster currently. So let's go ahead and jump into his kit. Now, first of all, in terms of his statistics, he doesn't have anything crazy going for him. You can see everything over here. If you're not familiar with it, you can check out ltr.gg. I'll link it down below. There is a stats page. You can go through and look at every character in the game to see what stats they have. Now, I don't think it's super crucial, but sometimes it can be helpful if you're trying to decide who to go for or how someone's going to work with the team. So Strider, for his stats, starting with health, working down all the way to speed, he has the tied for the 8th highest speed in the game out of 27. There are 46 characters, but there are a lot that are tied in little groupings. So there are 27 different places for health, and he ranks at 8th. For damage, he ranks 5th out of 17. Armor, he's 8th out of 21. Focus, he's 10th of 13. Resistance, he's 8th out of 15. And speed, he's 14th out of 39. So again, nothing crazy jumps out at me. He does have tied for 5th highest damage out of 17. That's pretty good. Some of these ranges, if there's above 10 and there's like a lot of them, like 27 for health, he's tied for 8th. That's pretty good. And also, I want to confirm too that some of the differences between places are literally 1 point. So he could be higher or lower depending on, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But just so you know, those are how all of his stats rank up in the game so far. Now, in terms of who he pairs well with, the game suggests Frodo and Halbrand. It's not technically wrong with Frodo because Frodo does work into Aragorn's lead, but there are no real like crossovers between their kits where it says if Frodo's an ally, or in Frodo's kit, there's no if Strider's an ally. So other than Strider's lead, and just like overall working with the Road Rivendell team and allies and stealth, what Frodo does, there's not anything specific between them, but obviously he is the leader of that team, so it makes sense he's going to work well with him at this point. The other character that he works well with is Halbrand, who we're also talking about in this video a little bit later. Halbrand, the big thing here is that he is a ranger and he has a leader for rangers, so if you were to use Halbrand as a leader with a team of rangers, he would have some synergy with Strider that way. Now, starting out with his abilities, he does have the There Is Still Hope ability. It's his leadership ability that works with the Road to Rivendell squad. It says whenever Strider crits, grant stealth for 1 turn to the most wounded Hobbit ally. So there you see with any Hobbits, not just Frodo, he's going to have some synergy, and it says it will apply to the most wounded Hobbit ally that doesn't already have stealth. So you can get multiple Hobbits in stealth, which is a pretty good thing for them. Then as you progress to the levels, it's going to increase the squad member damage by 5%, the armor by 5%, and then the damage and armor continue to stack up there. So not a bad lead, but from my understanding from those who played in the LTL and had like Gear 7 and 8 Road Rivendell teams, this team just leaves something to be desired. So if you're liking it, more power to you. We'll find out as this game progresses if there are any additions or updates to this team. But right now, it's not one that I would jump into using. And so if you're not using Strider in the lead, if you're not using the Road Rivendell team, you should not be upgrading the leadership ability. This should, in theory, always be at the lowest level possible. I can't remember if the lead, if they make you do that in the tutorial or not. I don't think so, so I think I did one of these. But in terms of saving gold and saving ability materials, I would not upgrade this unless you're running this team. If you are, go for it. If you're enjoying it, I'm a big fan of if you like it, then do it. So it's a good team, but my understanding is at equal gear levels to other teams that are kind of in whatever meta we currently have, they struggle a little bit. So that's just my what I've heard, my thoughts on it. But again, let me know if you're liking the Road to Rivendell team, if you're using them, and if you're competing pretty well in your arena. The next one is his push through basic attack. If you don't know, there are basics and specials that the characters can use. They also have sometimes leaderships or passive abilities that are always taking place. But we looked first at his leadership ability, which is always going to be taking place if he's in the leader slot and you have it activated. His basic is usable every single turn. You could only use it and nothing else, and be fine. I wouldn't suggest that, but there's no cooldown for it. The basic starts out at 100% damage, and as it ramps up in damage, it's going to add damage if targets have Bane. So you see at level 2, it increases the base damage to 110, and if the target has a Bane, instead deal 140. So if you're using Strider and you're able to, you want to try and prioritize enemies that have Banes on them so you get the most damage possible when you're using his basic attack. The next one up is Burn the Shadows. This one does have a 3-round cooldown, so you can use this every 3 rounds. It does start all the way full, so as you see here, this one has all orange bars filled in, so it is usable right away. This attack is going to hit 3 times for 55% damage per hit and inflict burning for 1 turn, which on the start of the character's turn who is inflicted with the burning is going to take damage based on a percent of the max health of the character. So the more max health they have, the bigger damage they're going to take. This cannot be evaded, and the Bane does not stack. So it does get a little bit of extra damage going out on top of what it's hitting. And so as you upgrade this, it's going to increase in damage per hit. So again, if it's hitting 3 times, increased damage on a multiple hit strike is very good. We're going to increase the burning duration. So that means on the 2nd level, they're going to have burning for 2 turns. And if they are a Nazgul at the 4th level, they're going to deal 105% damage per hit, which is a pretty significant jump. So if and when we have Nazgul in the game, Strider teams or Strider in teams might be something that they struggle with, but it's also just one of his abilities, and he's the only character with something like anti-Nazgul right now, so I have a hard time thinking that when there's a full Nazgul team out there, it'll be crazy. But nonetheless, if you haven't been playing through a story mode and there is a Nazgul you can target with this, go ahead and use the triple strike if you can. The last thing, and I think kind of why Strider is very good right now in the current meta, is his AoE heroic charge. It attacks all enemies for 100% damage, and then as it increases in level, it goes up in damage and crit chance. At the 4th level, you're going to reduce the stamina cost. So again, right here, if you see, you have a 5 stamina use. So if you use it, it's going to go down to 0, and every turn you get 1 stamina back to it. So at the 4th level, that's going to reduce that to 4 instead of 5, which is pretty good. So, and then max out again, where you get increased damage and increased critical chance. So a pretty good thing. The reason I think he's so good with this AoE is because AoEs are kind of king right now. More so than synergy or teams working together doing things. It just seems like AoEs are kind of king right now in Arena. So if you go in Arena, you'll see Ironhide with AoEs, you'll see Strider with AoEs, you'll see Eothanes with AoEs. And those teams usually do pretty well. So Strider fits into that well because he hits pretty hard and he's got an AoE to go along with it. Lastly for Strider is his passive. It's called the Greatest Huntsman. He is going to get 5% crit chance starting out, and then 5% armor, and an additional 5% armor for each ally with stealth. So if you are using with hobbits and he is hitting critical attacks with his lead, he'll be putting them into stealth and giving himself some more armor in turn. Again, this maxes out at like 15% armor, I believe, per stealth enemy. So also potentially in a ranger lineup in the future where you have multiple allies in stealth, he could have some pretty high armor, which means he'll take less damage. So it could be a good thing. It's definitely not hurting him. But again, that's the passive ability there on Strider. Now, in terms of what you should be prioritizing with Strider, because again, there are 5 different things here. Like I said on the leadership, if you're not using him as the leader, I would not deal with this. I would not put any points into it. It would be wasting gold if you're not using it. So even if it would increase his like power ranking, it's not worth it. It doesn't actually do anything for him if he's not in the lead spot. So this one's pretty obvious. If he is in the lead spot, yes, of course, go into it. Upgrade the Rotary Vanilla squad member damage and armor. That is going to help the whole squad, but otherwise don't touch it. The next thing I would prioritize upgrading would be his AoE. Again, we talked about it. AoEs are pretty much king right now. So any increase in damage to his AoE or added critical chance or reduced stamina at the every other level, he gets a little addition in addition to the damage. It's very, very good. So outside of that, I think the AoE is the first thing you should prioritize upgrading for him. The next thing I would do is the Burn the Shadows. Again, it's just the bigger hits you're going to go for first, the things that get you the most damage out of them. If you are looking through a character's kit trying to figure out what to do, try and skip over the ones that just add damage first and see if there are any additional effects. So again, his first level here adds a burning duration, which is pretty good. You have an, if the target is Nazgul. So there's extra effects being added. Again, with the AoE at certain levels, you get extra critical chance, you get extra stamina. So those are the ones you really should prioritize. But for Strider specifically, I would go with the AoE first, the Burn the Shadows next, and then lastly, his push through basic ability, which is still a very good one, but I would prioritize it behind his specials, and then his passive after that. So that's the order I would go in. Again, AoE, Burn the Shadows, push through, and Greatest Huntsman. Obviously, if you're using the lead, I would put this into the top priority, maybe behind the AoE still because the AoE is so good, but this goes up a lot if you're using him. If not, don't upgrade it. And that's it. That's a quick overview of Strider. You can find his character shards to upgrade him in the daily objectives or quests. So it's very slow and steady. I'm about to get mine to 4 stars, and I've been playing since global launch, a pretty fair amount. So I think a lot of people are around the 3-4 star ranking for Strider so far, and those who have been playing in the LTL might be close to or just getting to 5. But he's a very time-getting character. It's good because everyone gets a lot of him right away. But if you're really wanting to push him faster, you can't really spend to speed that up. So that is Strider and how you get his shards. Again, he's a very, very good character. I've already talked about it a lot. I'm not a huge fan of the Rotor Vanilla team right now and how they perform compared to equally geared squads. but nothing is really set right now in this game. So if you're enjoying it, I would roll with it. A lot of things are going to shift out. Every time we get a new legendary character, there's going to be a shift in the meta. So just because they're not amazing right now, or maybe matching up with the kind of AoE heavy meta we have right now, doesn't mean they won't down the road with any changes to the characters in the squad or additional members added to the squad potentially down the road. So that is Strider. Let me know if you are liking Strider down below, if you're using him as a leader or just as a plug and play AoE character. I think the most I see him used as is the plug and play AoE character who does good damage, but I do see the occasional Road to Rivendell team that is led by Strider, which is a very fun one, and I hope they get a little bit more love down the road. But for now, that is going to do it on our deep dive for Strider. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all in a future video.